Hello, my name is Simone Collins. I'm here with Malcolm, and today a very special guest as well. I'm so excited. This has been months in waiting. We are joined by Peachy Keenan. She is the author of Domestic Extremist, a practical guide to winning the culture war. Her Substack you can find at peachykeenan.com. And in addition to regularly sharing top drawer hot takes on Twitter, and her handle is Keenan Peachy. She's actually working on a new media startup called Lost Riviera, which maybe we'll hear about at the end. But Peachy, welcome.
Thank you so much, you guys. It is so great to finally be here. We were scheduling it for such a long time, and to see your smiling, happy faces.
Well, you were speaking at the Pronatalist conference, and you were the funniest speaker there.
Oh.
So I am thrilled to have you on. Although I have to say, some of our fans recently have also said my wife is really funny, and I that must be incredibly gender disconfirming for you, because the stereotype is women aren't that humorous.
That is, except for the women who are kind of like more right leaning. I feel like they are actually very funny, and that's why they're kind of drawn into this, I think.
Okay,
Very
well,
good
I had
take.
a specific question that I wanted to focus on with this episode.
Okay.
So there was a report that came out and looked at the fertility rate of the American native-born Catholic population. And so for those who don't know, Peachy Keenan is I think sort of the number one Catholic pronatalist in terms of like anyone I'm seeing. And it came out and said that the average fertility rate was 1.64 in the United States. Now that's pretty bad considering the report was done in 2008. It was called Religiosity and Fertility in the United States, the Role of Family Fertility Intentions. When we look at Europe, the average Catholic majority country has a fertility rate of only 1.3. And in Latin America, we've seen a rapid fertility collapse as well in the Catholic majority countries. Now, there have been studies, and we know what's causing this. Catholics actually have exactly the same fertility rate once they're married as any other highly religious individual, but they get married much later than all other Christian denominations. And so I wanted to brainstorm with you, why do you think this phenomenon is happening, and how can we fix it?
I've got all the answers right here. Hold on.
Yeah, you have 30 seconds, go.
Well, I mean, just take a step back a little bit from that. I'm a Catholic convert, but I didn't, I'm not just sort of one of these sort of regular normie American Catholics who kind of goes to mass on Easter and Christmas and like has 2.5 kids. Like that's not me. I definitely joined the like more fundamentalist, traditionalist Catholic sect. Okay. Because honestly, like I was coming from a very secular nothingness, like actually like nothing. My mother was like a committed atheist. And when I was going to do it, I was like, okay, I'm in. I wanted to like actually do it, like actually do the real thing. I wanted the authentic Catholic experience. Okay. And so we found this like, group of, our little like Catholic cult. There's these bubbles that are in various cities in America. You can find them. They're very based parishes where it's not watered down. They're not mimicking the Pope. They're not saying, who am I to judge? They're judging, and they are okay.
This is great.
In a healthy way. Okay. They are like, if you listen up and you're like, oh, it will lead you to good places. It will lead you
to social pressure towards positive action.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. How it's always been. That's the oldest.
Everyone is supposed to be able to do whatever makes them feel good whenever they feel like doing it and be affirmed for believing whatever they want to believe about themselves. There's no way that could lead to any sort of psychological damage.
Exactly. All you have to do is walk down any street where I live and you'll see the consequences of that.
Yeah, right.
You're in Malcolm, she's in Southern California, right? So like
I know, horrifying in LA. So one, we're gonna have to get to why you're living in LA before this. I want to hear that, but I want to hear about your marriage story and your conversion story. Because did you convert before you got married, after you got married? How did you think about this when you were dating your now husband?
Okay, I converted 10 years after we got married.
Whoa!
I had already had 4 children.
Whoa!
So when we got married, both of us were, basically former kind of liberal, basic nothings who had kind of found our own way to kind of more conservative political thinking. Yeah, I think because of 9/11 and because of all the like failures of Republican presidents and all these things. And we just kind of became like kind of radicalized really for both sides. But when I met my husband, I was sort of politically conservative, but I was still socially liberal. That's how I had grown up. I went to Ivy League. That was just you're just absorbing.
Yeah, you weren't a savage.
I wasn't a savage. I was civilized. I was at all the cool parties, and everyone around me was, a card carrying pro-choice feminist. So of course I was also, but it was, for all of us, it was very skin deep. We didn't think much about it in that era. It was politics wasn't identity in those days. It was like you thought about it once a year on election day, or if it came up in a class. Like you didn't think about like my reproductive rights. Like that was not even a thing, really. Although people were definitely exercising those reproductive rights all around me.
Yes.
And so I met my husband, and he had already been red pilled. And so when we first started dating, we were like in the process of, I just moved to New York City, and it was very like romantic, and then we were kind of, falling for each other. But in the process, I was discovering like very alarming things about him. Like he was a Republican.
Oh no!
Oh, in New York, how vulgar!
Exactly. My parents were Republicans, but I had never met a Republican like in my peer group ever who was open about it. He liked guns. He had a gun. He had been in the military. I was like, all of these things were sort of like red flags to me in my like feminist bubble of like, oh no, like what will my girlfriend say? Like,
yes, no, totally. I know this feeling because I came from that background too. Of just actually, I had someone who knew me from childhood recently write to me and be like, but you're a Republican? Just that kind of shock, right?
Yeah, trigger, like it was crazy. But again, it was still not politics. It was not just identity. He was cool, and my friends were. It wasn't our thing. We were just having fun, going out and doing karaoke and drinking. Whatever.
Yeah.
And then, but the more I hung around him, I was kind of like, well, you're kind of right about all this, and yeah, you're kind of right. Like, and he was actually happened to be pro-life, but we weren't religious. He was just from a kind of like a logical standpoint, and like, yeah, that kind of, wow, maybe you're right, or you're onto something here. I hadn't really thought ever about it deeply in any way. And so, he was raised like me, kind of secular nothingness, but he had been baptized as a baby. His father had been a, altar boy in Kansas City in the old days. And so, but then had been completely fallen away and had never set foot in a church since then. So we got married in his parents' backyard with a judge. It was all very civil, zero religion involved. And that was fine with me. And I became pregnant. Like, I think that first year, we were like, we wanted to get on it. Just like you guys, you didn't want to wait around.
Yes.
Yeah. We jumped right in. And like, very sadly, we were unprepared to find out, like at 3 months, went in for the ultrasound, there was no heartbeat that we had. So it was a miscarriage. And we were like lambs to the slaughter because we hadn't even thought it was a thing. You see the heartbeat, you think, oh, we're out of, no one had prepared us. We were
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, it all worked out in the end, but it was such a shock, to emotional shock. Like we were just like, no. And he said to me the next day, I'm going to convert. I'm going to become Catholic now because I can't deal with this. So really the miscarriage was his kind of inciting incident. And he was like, I need to do this. And honestly, my reaction was like, all right, buddy, like,
Wait,
our journey.
Sorry, I might be out of line with this question, but don't Catholics think that a baby like that would go to purgatory because it wasn't baptized? Like that seems like it wouldn't be comforting. Sorry, I
don't know. I do know. At the time, I'm not sure. I do know. I mean, at the time, we weren't Catholic at that moment, and I didn't realize. Yeah. Now that I'm around a lot of Catholic people, I can tell you that I've had friends, for example, who have like a tubal pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And they will actually get the fallopian tube with the like embryo that they have to surgically take out of you so you won't die. And they will get that baptized.
Oh. So the baptism is important.
Yeah. So in terms of what happened to me, I didn't know anything about it. And I went in for a D&E, which is like basically an abortion, but it's a dead, they put you to sleep and they do it in the hospital. And I didn't even think about any of that stuff. But later on, I thought, oh, wow, they just kind of threw it in the garbage.
Wow.
I do feel, when I think about it, I feel like sorry and sad that I didn't think about it, but it is what it is. So what happens to those? I have no idea, Malcolm. I really don't. I'm like a very non-educated Catholic, to be really frank. Like, I don't know.
I'm thinking when Malcolm and I spoke with a priest about this, because we were speaking about IVF, and we're like, well, what about the frozen embryos? Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think per the current status, like the current stance with the Catholic Church, embryos have souls. So like there are souls to save, but like per older stances,
I'll edit in post. I'll just ask AI. So when I asked AI, it said that currently this is a question that does not have a hard, clarified answer in Catholic doctrine. So then I went to be like, where did I get the idea that this was the case? And it was Dante's Divine Comedy. That is where I got this idea, because this is what Dante believed, that limbo was where all of the unbaptized infants went. And I just remember this image of billions of crying, unbaptized infants looking for their parents, and maybe a few thousand noble pagans having to look after them in limbo, is this visceral image that I was never able to get out of my head after reading that book. But
Yeah.
I actually have a question here. I love that all my theological questions go to AI now. I'm like, what's the correct stance on
The
this?
AI god is here.
I want to ask, so you decided, like, you were keen to have kids because, as you know, in this lefty cult that you guys started in, right? Like, having kids isn't the normal path. But like, you were planning to do it soon after getting married.
Yeah, you did it right away.
What
And did
was
you get
the
married young,
motivation there?
or like right after college or in college?
Late 20s.
Oh yeah, so young for today,
Yeah, but people would
absolutely.
have said you were like a child bride or something. Like, how did you
Babies having
handle?
babies.
Yeah, what was the motivation here? Because it's interesting to me that you likely, like, when I'm looking at like Catholics getting married later, unfortunately, you almost sort of are the exception that proves the rule, because you got married before you were a Catholic. So it wasn't influencing your decision making yet. And then I can look at somebody like who's Pearl Davis or something, right? Who starts as a Catholic but isn't married, or Nick Fuentes, who starts as a Catholic but isn't married. And I went through a list of like young Catholic influencers, and they're almost all unmarried. And like, maybe if your husband had been Catholic, he wouldn't. Like, this is really interesting to me. So what motivated you to have a kid before you had the religious motivation?
Yeah, I think it was actually becoming, my parents had not been religious, but they had been conservatives. And when I became a political conservative, that did require me to, let the feminism fall away from my eyes. And so when you do that, suddenly you're like, oh, my maternal instinct. Oh, I do want kids. Like, maybe I don't want to wait until I'm, in my late 30s. And then when you can kind of let yourself be in, you kind of have to suppress all of that a little bit when you are in the kind of basic feminist mindset. You actually do, because you're going to go right to work and you're going to delay everything. And if you get pregnant, you'll abort it, and then you go get your whatever. So your career comes first. When you can kind of when you can kind of break out of that mentality, that brainwashing, really that programming they put into you very young as a teenage girl, you're more in touch with your maternal instinct. So I did want it. The minute we got married, I was like, babies, let's go. I had never been a baby person. I was never one of those like, let me take the baby. Yeah. I didn't care. I was kind of
like, with Simone. Simone had all these fears that she wouldn't love her kids. She's like, I don't feel
common. That's really common if you haven't been around them yet. When you're a first timer, we don't live in a baby centric culture.
Not at all.
I had two cousins growing up. I didn't live near. I never held a baby from the time my little sister was born, like until my own baby. Like, I didn't hold babies. Like,
there you go. Yeah. Yeah.
And so you're not having that, like, aren't they so cute? And when you see babies, it does fill you with these like endorphins, like, oh, I never had that. But when I got married, I just knew, okay, I'm old. I got to do it now. I knew I hadn't been like, memed out of my biological clock. Okay. I wanted to get going.
So now I want to go back to this story. Your husband converts. What are you thinking at this moment?
Right. So I thought he was a little bit crazy. I was like, that's your journey, bro. But I married you. So I'm kind of like, what are you going to do? What are you going to tell your husband? Like, your new husband, like, fuck you. Like, I'm gonna, oh, sorry, baby. I'm out. Like, no, you want to support them. And I understand, you're in mourning, right? So he went through the whole conversion process. And it really was a process of me going along with him. And, being kind of dragged to mass, dragged through. And that was my education. So that was when I was like, and meeting other people, women like me, who were actually Catholics, like cradle Catholics, who were so cool, so open, so accepting, much more so than my, liberal Ivy League girlfriends, who are very judgmental, very critical, very dogmatic, very conformist. With the Catholics, I was kind of like, could let my freak flag fly. And I was like, they kind of brought me in as like, here, here's Peachy, and she needs us like to kind of guide her through the way. So it was really like a new peer group who were so much more like cool and awesome than the friends I had. And then we went through the whole process. We baptized all of our children because I thought, well, rationally, this is a great way to raise a child. Much better than what I had, which was like basically anything goes, just, it was wilded, right? And I didn't want my kids to have that. I wanted them to have structure and, have an infrastructure, a moral framework that they could just take and grasp and help them, go through life, which is, I think, so great. And then, but finally, I had 3 babies under 3. Okay. I had a 0, a 1, and a 2, 3 in diapers at one point. It was wild times. So finally, I found like matching shoes. Like 10 years later, I was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to do it. So I went down to the local parish and I went through the process myself.
Explain matching shoes. I don't understand.
Oh, because I was pregnant and nursing for like 10 straight years. And then I finally found shoes that I could match and go leave the house. That's my joke, Malcolm.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm not.
It takes a while, Malcolm.
But hold on.
Never mind.
It sounds like, and this is something that I've noted a lot, is I think a lot of people, when they're in what we call the urban monoculture, like this, the old group of friends that you had, and you start interacting with the educated religious people, you're like often really surprised by how real they are and open they are when contrasted with the other communities. Like, it's not as much of a status game. One of my favorite lines about this was they were asking, one of the 5th horsemen of the atheist apocalypse or whatever, that former Muslim, right? Is whatever, I'll let it post. But why did she go to Christianity instead of Islam when she became like theistic? And she goes, well, of all the years of attacking theistic people, and that was my job. She was like, it was attacking Christians, it was attacking Muslims. The Muslims would always send me stuff about how they were going to kill me or grate me or whatever. And the Christians would always send me stuff that was like, we're praying for your soul. We want you to, just try it. Like, will you come to mass with me one day? Like, we really want what's best for you. And she realized that they had never really responded to her with anger, not in a big way. And so she was like, when I started thinking about joining one of the communities, naturally, I'm going to go to that one, even though it's not my birth community. And I thought that was, and it's something that I've definitely felt, is that these communities are dramatically more accepting than individuals would think, even with significant theological questioning, which individuals know we do on this channel. Like, we do like deep theological questioning on this channel. Like, oh, this part doesn't make sense. This part doesn't make sense. How can I do this better? And I think people would assume that religious Christians would take that negatively, when in reality, most of them are actually quite excited to be having a theological conversation.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, exactly.
And I'm sure it's something that you saw as well. So you get in the community, you convert. What was that process like? Beginning to go to church,
Yeah, but we've been going to mass, every week with the children. It was very, very much a part of our lives. We were hanging out with all these people. And so I was like fully on board. I think it was just like the chaos of my life at that time was like, I wasn't able to like go and take every afternoon and go do this thing. And then when I finally did it, in a very lame, my local parish was at the time was very lame. It was very, unorthodox, let's say, very liberal. Yeah. And, the Catholic school, our kids went to that, there was a school attached, and you would see 0 of the families at the school in mass on Sunday.
Oh, wow.
Maybe one family who was like, Hungarian or something. They were just like they were just doing it because it was a way out of the public school. Yeah. And so that was part of my driver also. I was like, well, I don't want this like phoned in, watered down. If I'm going to do this, I believe this now, like I'm on board. I want to do the real thing. So we ended up moved our house. We moved the whole family across town to a parish that is actually much more, I guess you would say conservative, much more traditional. And which was where a lot of these families that we had been hanging out with were. And they were, to them, I have 5 children. I'm something of a lightweight, to be frank with them.
In this particular community.
Yes. Like our TFR is off the charts. We're like beating out Congo and like, Sudan. Like we're
nice.
This is good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I have a friend who has one of my good friends, these women are my age. She has 10 kids. Another woman my age, 12 kids.
Wow.
I'm like at 5, relatively on the low end. But the thing is, there's friends of ours who they have 1 child, they have 2 children. It's not, and no one ever would say like, what's wrong with you? Like, no, like any child is welcomed. You want to have whatever God gives you is great. There's no, you can't go too high is my point.
How did you break it to your kids that you were Catholic now? Like, was this like a conversation that you remember having? Were they old enough that they had known that they'd grown up? And yeah,
they fully were. I mean, I think my oldest, when I did the whole like I did, they do for adults, they do it on Easter Vigil, and they do everything at once. They do all the sacraments once. They baptize you, confirm you, first communion, all in one shebang, right? Like you're in the white robe and they're dump water on you, and it's just like you're done. Like and they knew, they were so excited because they were cradle Catholics, so they were very Mommy, when are you gonna do it? When are you gonna do it, Mommy? So they're thrilled. They're thrilled because now
that's amazing. So your kids converted before you did.
I know, right?
that is like, that's funny. That's amazing.
Well, they were born into it. They were baptized when they were little babies. So it's been, so I'm like, I hear about this, like the birth rates, like the Catholic, what you're talking about in the beginning about the birth rates among Catholics.
Yeah, it's like that school where it was all sort of like fake Catholics. The problem is that Catholic is, I guess you'd argue that Catholic, like maybe Jew, is almost a cultural identity instead of a religion for a lot of people. And that's what's towing down all the fertility statistics.
The Jews are I think, having the same schism where the Orthodox Jews, the sects that are kind of, keeping the kind of fires burning, like the ways they did it in the old country, are having lots of children, even in LA, you'll go through the Jewish neighborhoods, and they're walking to shul, and they have like, bigger families than me. And so, but in both of these, I grew up around a lot of secular Jews on the west side of LA. That was like the norm in all these private schools. And maybe you have 2 kids, like, maybe max. And the same for like the wishy-washy Catholics, the families at the kind of liberal Catholic parishes. Same exact thing. Maybe they have 2 kids. In other words, there's like no daylight between them and some like purely secular, non-religious at all public school family. Maybe, 2 kids, maybe. And
well, I mean, continue. No, I was wondering, how do you take back the church? Like, how do you?
Well, right. That's the question that you have to wonder. So when you say like Catholic TFR is falling, well, there's just no daylight anymore between kind of mainstream American Catholicism and mainstream American liberalism. It's basically that's the same group of people. I mean, I saw some statistic that was like 65 or 70% of self-proclaimed Catholics are voting for Kamala Harris.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure that if the Pope could vote, he would vote for Kamala Harris, like 100%. Like that's the world we live in here. Where Catholic is really like you're like a CINO, you're like a Catholic in name only. And there's like a big schism between the conservative Catholics in America and the kind of normie. And so how do you reconcile that? Like you said, take back the church? Like,
well, I'm actually like psychologically, I really wonder when you feel like the Pope, who's like the head of the church, has moved in a direction that the church doesn't like how does that work? I guess
it like doesn't, but I think is, me and some of my friends are always like, like, oy vey, like this guy, like, who is this guy? He's a Jesuit. The Jesuits have always been very liberal, but he's really, to me, a politician. And a politician first. Like, why is he meeting with Alex Soros all the time? Why is he meeting with Bill Clinton all the time? Like, what? Well,
he's doing a good job with the politics.
In the Vatican, Sorry, what?
I think he's genuinely doing a good job with the politics and doing a good job with the optics. I think removing a lot of the flair from the popeship, like going a bit more austere, was a really smart move, even if his theological stuff might be.
Well, what I feel like is happening when I look at sort of the analogs with demographic collapse more in general, is that he's trying to essentially do what the United States is doing. Is they're like, well, let's just turn to immigration. Immigration will solve the problem. And he's like, well, let's just loosen the rules and let's make this a big tent religion and everyone can join and you don't have to make any sacrifices and everyone goes to heaven. Kind of like I'm seeing policies loosen and the borders soften and become more porous. And I feel like that's kind of the same approach, but that it's not working. Just like how depending on immigration for demographic collapse is not going to save a nation, opening up to everyone and also relaxing on rules and going softer as a religion is not going to save Catholicism. It could fudge the numbers for a little bit. But I also don't think that this is necessarily the factor that's at play solely for lower demographic, sorry, I was going to say demographic, lower Catholic birth rates, because it seems that the birth rates are really high with Catholics in general, but that the issue is that they're marrying too late. And I'm curious what you see, even within the small data point of your Catholic community, what's happening with young people? Are they getting married in their 20s? Or is this a genuine issue even among the more hard religious Catholics? Are they getting married too late?
Yeah, it seems to me that the solution that some of the families I know have found, which is very effective to producing early marriages, is all about college selection. So there is a kind of a smallish list of colleges in the United States that if you go there, you are very likely, if you wish, to find a potential spouse.
So they're like the BYUs of Catholicism.
The BYUs of Catholicism. And like Ring by Spring is like an actual phenomenon. That was like a 1950s thing. But these are kids who are Ring by Spring, and you'll get the alumni magazine, and the back is like all the weddings from the class of 2022.
That's so smart.
There's like 25 weddings from that class.
Wow.
So we have some listeners whose families may have lapsed. Can you give them a few colleges that they should be checking out?
Yeah. So actually, a great source is something called the Newman's List, Cardinal Newman's List. I don't know the exact website. Go Google Cardinal Newman List, and they actually have a list of all the colleges they recommend, with the usual suspects, but also some smaller ones that people may not, have heard of. I have friends who go to Franciscan University in Steubenville, University of Dallas in Dallas. Thomas Aquinas College has 2 colleges. There are a whole host of these sort of smaller schools. I don't even know if Notre Dame is still on the list. They might not be because they've gotten so wishy-washy. But there are these schools where if you go, I've been to now 3 weddings of kids who met their spouses at a school like Thomas Aquinas College, which is in Ojai, California, which is a very kind of trad calf, great books, classical, those are all the kind of like the dog whistle for finding a wife. Great books, classical. Find your wife in one of those places. Not to say you went elsewhere, but I think Christian colleges. It really does seem to be that the marriage rates are doing fine if you're going to an explicitly, openly Christian or Catholic college.
So colleges, to a great extent, at least in the United States, are a modern shorthand for marriage markets. If we're not creating organized marriage markets, like the LDS Church has a bunch more like youth conferences and youth wards. But if you don't have those, or even if you do, I mean, the religion essentially still relies heavily on BYU. So college is kind of the modern way.
I think this is a really powerful, and I hadn't considered how powerful it is. Sort of social framing is, you should be married by, or not married, but have a spouse partner lined up by your second year of college. And if you don't, you effed up. And I remember feeling
shame on you, Malcolm. You didn't do that.
But I freaked out about it. I told you when I met you, I was like, I should have found a wife by now. I'm going to grad school so I can find a wife there, because I didn't nail it the first time.
Yeah, you're like a 24-year-old woman on the London season.
Find her,
Yeah.
Are your kids doing this? You have one, you just sent the first one to college.
Yeah, so I have one who is at a school. It's basically a non-denominational Christian school. I'm not going to say the name, but there are many potential prospects there. It is a school where is the Ring by Spring phenomenon does happen by senior year.
Okay.
And he's the kind of boy who, on him, it all took. Okay. Like, I don't know. Like, he's just the kind of guy, all the religious indoctrination we did for him, it took. He's a great guy. He is extremely devout. He's extremely chaste. And he wants to have, not wait too long. I would never tell a boy, you must be married by this age, like 22, you have to be married by this age. Not at all, because it depends on what a million things.
Yeah. You need to find the right person.
Yeah. But if he did have a serious girlfriend or was thinking about getting engaged in his early 20s, I would just be happy as a clam. So, I mean, fingers crossed, he's definitely on. We got one right.
Okay. So question, because I don't understand this. What the hell are you doing living in LA?
Yeah, I know. It's not really my fault. I didn't choose. I didn't choose it. So my parents are New York immigrants. They immigrated from New York City to Los Angeles right when they got married in the 70s.
Oh.
And so in the mid 70s. And so they had us all here. We grew up here. And to this day, my mom is here. My dad is, they're divorced, but they both live here. My brother and sister, well, at least my brother is still here. On my husband's side, he grew up in Santa Monica, right? 5 minutes from where I grew up. He was almost the boy next door. His parents are here. He has 6 siblings. They're all here.
Oh,
All
wow.
their children are here. So, our Thanksgivings are these like huge family affairs in Santa Monica. And it has always felt like, well, should we get out? Where are we going to go? How are we going to leave? Our parents are older. And the other thing is that my husband, it's sort of like it's your home. And I drive around, Malcolm, and I see like on my just 2 blocks away, tents, homeless, junkies. You see them just like doing drugs right in front of my kids. See this like almost on the way to mass. Oh, there's a guy, ODing on fentanyl. Like we see that every week. And I'm like, we got to get out of here. And my husband's like, to him, California is like he's 7th generation.
Whoa.
He's like,
Okay.
this is my home. And also his job, it's not really transferable. So we have this thing called like, his income that we would.
Yeah,
There's
they're
that,
like
which
that.
is nice. Yeah. Oh.
Kind of nice to get an income from the man of the house. If we could pull it off one day, I will get out. The problem for us is like, where do you go? Because, the shit-lib blue cities tend to have like the best food, the best culture, like things we are used to having.
I'm going to push back here.
Oh, no.
Simone believed all of this. Simone
Uh-oh.
believed all. Simone, do you remember how hard I had to fight to get you to consider to live outside a city?
Well, this
But
is
you're in
true.
the woods somewhere in Pennsylvania somewhere.
Yeah.
Simone, tell her your experience of moving. Like, what happened after?
It's true. Yeah. I was like, I'm never going to live outside a city. The suburbs sounds like the worst thing in the world. Like, why would I ever do that? And now I couldn't imagine doing anything else. The food out here is great. Cost of living is amazing. And also we spend more time socializing in cities than we did when we lived in cities.
Right. Because you're doing it intentionally. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have flexibility. Like, most commonly we'll do New York or DC because we can drive to either. We're 30 minutes outside Philadelphia, but no one's there. So screw that. But
you're selling me. I'm open to it.
No, hold on. I'll do a better. Simone forgot. So the thing she complained about, she's like, what about like getting a haircut or going to a grocery store? And then we get out here and she's like, oh, I can just drive. We used to walk 20 minutes to the grocery store and then walk back with like bags of groceries. And now we just drive and put it in our trunk. Or she was like, what about the food? And what she forgot about, and I think this is something that a lot of people in cities forget about, is different immigrant groups settle in different locations.
Yeah.
So for example, if you love Italian food, you're going to get the best Italian food in the center of a city. But if you love Indian food, which is our favorite, Indian, Thai, that sort of stuff, those populations generally settle in the suburbs. And so there is way better, Indian food, sushi, all the types of food that we actually like in our area. And she was a little surprised by this. I will admit, I can't get good rendang out here. Like the Indonesians tend to settle in cities more. But
you're telling me I would be totally open to it. It does feel like maybe we're just too old to move. Maybe we'll have to do when our kids migrate.
Well, it's more their location. Jobs matter. Like cities have jobs.
Jobs matter. Yeah.
Things that cities have is some jobs you can't leave. And
more than that, support networks matter. And when you mention the amount of family you both have living close by, when you are raising 5 kids, having a local family is huge. Yeah. I'm so jealous.
It's been amazing. And all my, and our network of friends, we had a lot of families leave our school during the pandemic. A lot of people fled to Dallas, to Tennessee, to Montana, Idaho. We had a family who moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and actually they just came back. They're returning. They felt like they couldn't replicate the community that they had here, which is, you don't realize that you can't just like pick up a whole set of friends that you've known for 20 years and replicate that elsewhere. Although, I mean, a lot of my friends are just like on my computer, you know what I mean? They're just like they're my internet friends. So I don't know how how, like, I think that would mitigate a lot of that. Like you said, it's okay
Yeah.
to go like a couple times a year and go to a party. I don't necessarily need like daily, interactions with like my girlfriends. I'm not that kind of.
Do you have like a Discord fan group?
I have no idea. I'm not on Discord. I just basically, Twitter is my only social media. Is there a Discord? I have no idea.
There could be that you don't even know about.
My teenager is on Discord, and maybe he could help me figure that out.
I didn't. I know, like when we started this channel, I was like, Discord's stupid. I don't like it. And then we kept having fans reach out to us and be like, start a Discord, start a Discord, start a Discord.
Oh, wow, really?
And finally we started one, and now Discord is like my favorite social media platform because it's the only one where there's like no toxicity, because it's all our fans, so you're just not going to get much toxicity. And when there is, I can choose to ban them. So, but I've actually been surprised by, but it sounds like you don't need it because you've got your local community and stuff like that. I mean, this is another thing I wonder that we've been building up, is sort of like a community of like influencer friends that like I want my kids to hang out with their kids, but like we don't have anything like a genuinely local community.
Yeah, and that's not a thing of value to discount at all, especially when you have young kids.
Especially
and especially completely made the right calculation. I've decided.
Aligned.
Right. To misquote Sartre, hell is other people's children. A lot of the time. Okay. Because you can do all the indoctrination of your own kids that you want and tell them all the truths that you believe. And then you drop them off for one play date. And they're going to come back and they're going to tell you a lot of things that they learned at the friend's house because you didn't know the mom was some kind of like loony, social justice. That happened to my daughter. She came back and she knew all the birds and the bees. And she was like 4. And this mom was like this new age holistic midwife or whatever. And she was a dear sweet girl, but she had educated my daughter and had never, without me having anything to do about it. And I was like, so you know what I'm saying? So it's like it goes both ways, the kids. So you have to be careful who they're.
That's why I don't let my kids have friends. I've been very strict about this as a father and a husband.
Yeah.
Which is to say, people are like, oh, your kids don't have birthdays? I'm like, no, F that. Like, birthdays seem ridiculous. We're going to have a lot of kids. They can celebrate the birth of their next sibling. It happens every year. They need to calm down with this indulgent stuff.
Right.
Our friends, like, I don't know, like, do our kids, I know they have formed friendships with other kids at their stuff, but like, I haven't really tried to foster that.
Well, I think that having get-togethers with like-minded families who have children roughly your same age is hugely valuable. It's not something that they need to be stuck with them 6, 7, 8 hours a day. But I think that doing it on some kind of basis is obviously great. And, you never know. You can do a little like early matchmaking.
I know that's what we're looking at doing. We've been doing that with our little ones, with other like aligned technophilic types.
Nice.
Well, a question I have for you though, in terms of raising kids, and this is something that came up at Natalism conference last year, is that there were some parents we met who had a lot of kids, raised them in their religion, or at least thought they were doing that, and had reached a point at which their kids were adults and suddenly were like, you know what? I'm not in this religion anymore. And like had completely gone mainstream culture, no religion left, very unlikely to get married and have kids. Sort of everything was lost. And it doesn't really matter from an intergenerational standpoint how many kids any individual has. It really matters how many grandkids they have and how many grandkids they have. Like that's the sign of success. You've created a thriving human who has been able to create a thriving adulthood and pass it on. Are there things that you tried to do with your kids or that you think went well with your kids? Because you mentioned, for example, that your son actually is leaning in to religion. He's not like leaning out, which is really exciting to hear. Mm-hmm. Are there things that you'd recommend people do or things that you've observed over time that you think would help with cultural retention?
I think the main thing and the main success stories I've seen with like the young couples who have kind of grown up like within our little bubble and gotten married early and had gone and had kids like in their early 20s. The main thing is keeping a little bit of a moat around them for as long as possible between them and like mainstream culture. Mm-hmm. So like people saying like, well, they grew up, I raised them religious, but then they just fell away. But again, there's a big difference between like being raised religious are being raised like with actual deep faith or with an actual infrastructure, whatever it is, whatever form that is, and being raised to actually cherish things like family, things like, you know, your kin, having a big family. I mean, I think the reason we got into it really was one of the reasons was my husband's oldest of 7 kids. And so his mother had this, you know, she was kind of like a boomer kind of lib, but she just loved babies, right? She happened to have many as possible. And so just having this like awareness of giving your children awareness of babies are good. Babies won't hold you back. Again, it's countering with, especially with young girls that you have, countering the messages that they're going to get everywhere else with no, babies should not be avoided like they're poison. Babies are good things to have one day. You know, you should wait until you have a life partner. You should wait, you know, don't do it but these are a wonderful thing, and you should embrace that part of your biology. It's important to be able to express that in a healthy, good way. And so I think that just countering the culture's messages with your own, like you have a very strong family culture, creating your own family culture is so important. And again, it comes down to really for kids, when they get a little older, they're kind of raising themselves in their peer group, who their peers are, who their peers' parents are. What are they teaching them at the school? Are you homeschooling them? Like what is like the sum total? Now, I'm going to get a lot of this junk on the internet, and my kids are on the internet too. Like they're looking at the stuff that a lot of other kids are looking at, but they've kind of have already these kind of built-in immunities and filters. Like they're not going to be looking at things that are pornographic or things that are blasphemous or things that kind of, you know, go against, like they like kind of are kind of conditioned to kind of like, oh, well, that's not for me, you know? And so just kind of from an early age, giving them the tools to discern, you know, the like good way to live and there's a bad way to live. This is what's good about our way. And it seems to, so, you know, it's a numbers game, right? You're not going to win them all. There's always going to be, you know, one that gets away. One of the baby turtles gets, you know, eaten by the crabs. Like they're not all going to make it to the ocean, right? That's why the mommy turtle
gets eaten by the crabs. I'm imagining crabs as like blue hair and.
But so you want to have like, what does the turtle have? Like 50 eggs. So, you know, it's a numbers game. So people with 1 or 2 kids, you have a very low chance of grandchildren. You know, one could decide never to get married, never to have children. One could choose something else. One could be infertile. One could get sick and die. You don't know what's going to happen with children. With 5 kids, I feel like I'm likely to, you know, get 10 plus grandchildren, God willing.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and the number of kids that you have influences the number of kids your kids have, which a lot of people don't think about. These people have 2 kids. We were like, oh, I want to have 1 kid. I want to have 2 kids. How can you talk me into this? Or how can I'm like, but it doesn't matter if you have 1 kid. Like your kid's not going to have kids. So like, why we're not this conversation doesn't matter to me. Right. I want the person who has 5 kids to have 10 kids. I don't want the person who is thinking about 1 or 2 kids to have, you know, 1 additional kid. That's not relevant.
Right.
So yeah, you're totally right about this. And I wonder, yeah, no, and I think about it myself. How do I ward off the crabs better?
Ward off the crabs. Well, but I love that, you know, it's
people who are intentional about warding off the crabs actually do okay, Simone, but they need to think about it and see it as a real threat. Everyone I know who has their kids taken doesn't really take it as a serious thing.
They didn't realize that there were seagulls and crabs out there. Instead, they're just like, yeah, we'll just, you know, go off to the ocean, little one. No.
They were basically like, if they went to church every week, they'd be fine. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
That's not enough.
Yeah. And
like watching Fox News, that's not going to do it. And like, you know, subscribing to the Daily Wire, like that's not going to do it. Like those are fine to do. You can do those things if you want. It's much deeper than that. And a lot of it is why I just saw today, Justin Lee, you know, at First Things, he had a big post about young women are leaving the church, Christianity and Catholicism in droves, but young men's numbers are going through the roof.
Huh.
And we're seeing this, you know, there's a, you know, the political gender divide, right? Young women are becoming way more liberal, young men. But the chart is going like, whoop. Young men are becoming more conservative, but it's also happening in Christianity. Okay. Young men are going to services of all kinds. And young women are like, no, not for me.
It's funny. Other religions are doing this. So in Mormons, it's the men who leave disproportionately and the women who stay. And in conservative Jewish communities, it's the same.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. Why is, I guess, you know, I feel like something about me things that Catholicism attracts men for the same reason that like some huge proportion of men on Twitter are always thinking about Rome. And that for the same reason why like women go to Mormonism for the same reason why there are so many female Mormon influencers. Like there's just very different
They're like all hot blondes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. It's just
big houses and Stanley Cups. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the Mormon pitch, the LDS
I
pitch is like a vibe and a lifestyle. And it's and I think the Catholic pitch is very technical and cerebral, and you're just not going to get as many women who are like instantly sold on that, I think. But I'm not sure. I'm hoping. I don't know if you read about
a certain type of sexy, like you got Twilight, right?
Now, yeah. Like Mormons have like their like vampire novels.
But wait, a Catholic Twilight.
You get JD Vance for Catholics. Recent, you know.
Yeah, we got JD. Well, but JD Vance is a dude. So there's this trend that I read about in the Free Press where like young Catholic women are starting to wear veils. And they're like getting really into it. And it's because they see some Catholic influencer wearing a veil. And they're like, what do I have to do to get one of those? Like, is this for a special status? And I'm hoping that maybe there can be some kind of like social media influencer way to get girls into Catholicism.
Yeah. I mean, fake it till you make it. Like that will work.
It works, man. Start with like, you got to get a good fashion hook, you know, and then you're in.
I think the veil could be the fashion.
Bring back veils. Yeah.
Make them like trendy and like sponsored by like, I don't know, brands. Yeah. I mean, I think for men, there's all these great Catholic icons, these like kind of crusaders and knights and, you know, King Arthur, all these Charlemagne, all these incredibly masculine, heroic, chivalric examples. And Catholicism actually does have wonderful female role models and examples. I mean, starting with like the Virgin Mary, right?
Yeah.
A beautiful ideal and this beautiful icon. And then there's a lot of wonderful female saints who are heroic, Joan of Arc and Saint Agatha and all these incredible murders. But it is, you know, I think for girls, it feels like, well, I'm not a virgin. I don't want to wear like these kind of like robes. Like, where do I fit?
Yeah, less relatable.
It's less relatable for kind of a modern contemporary girl. Yeah. So where does she fit in? And I think there are a lot of Catholic influencers who are kind of like, you know, moms, like mommy blogger types who have conferences and huge fan bases, and women fly around to hear them talk. And, you know, I know a lot of them, and they are like on these circuits with like huge rabid audiences, but they're definitely preaching to the choir, and they're talking to women their own age and men. And really the last nut to crack, no pun intended, is like 20 something young women. Yes. And how to crack that nut. I swear, if you could crack it, you'll save the world.
It was, I think, a desirable pool of 20-something young men.
Maybe,
but they've learned to hate men. I guess they see men as the enemy, right? So, and I think that's where a lot of the next generation's Catholics are going to come from.
Okay, here's the thing. No. You give me an idea just there. So, when I was a kid, a family friend of ours was a Carmelite nun, also a Catholic convert, but like very cloistered, very, very conservative. Now she's a mother, and she had to deal with in her convent lots of young women converting to Catholicism and then wanting to become a nun and having to weed a lot of them out because of anxiety disorders and other sort of mental illness adjacent issues, because they're like, oh, this is my great way to like nope out of society. And she's like, no, this is about faith. This is not about like, you're good at. I'm wondering if like it basically reforming people like from, I'm not saying legitimate mental illness, and I'm not saying that mental illness and anxiety problems are illegitimate, but like, I feel as though modern culture has bestowed many young women with mental illness, depression, anxiety problems that actually are more societally generated and not actually endogenous.
A lot of it.
Yeah. Like, so like grab them in with like the nun mental health, like reform, but then like just like slide them out of the convent, you know, into a more like hardline religious community.
It's like they get punked. They get brought into.
Yeah, it's like, oh no, yeah, like, oh, anxiety problems. What? Yeah, join the convent. Cool outfit.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna give you a makeover. Girl.
Yeah, and then like, you know what? Actually, you could also like, it's also really, you know, you don't have to have the habit. You can have the veil, you know, and then just like, but veils look cuter. because there's more lace. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out some kind of pipeline here.
No, this is great to brainstorm ways to influence, get into their brains. And
I mean, none fashion. Malcolm and I were rating religious fashions the other day, and like Catholic fashion is God tier. I mean, just it's so good.
You mean like clergy wear and like the
clergy wear? Yeah, but
that's the problem. Is it's like
rate it as the top tier because my complaint was that it was isolated to the clergy. And that it looks really good. Like classic Catholic priest outfits are really nice looking.
Yeah,
they're very bold.
Yeah.
They look very authoritative, but still have a degree of austerity to them. They don't look like you're peacocking like the Orthodox outfits.
Oh, but they're elegant. They're elegant. Oh,
very elegant. But I was like, but then why can't I, as a regular Catholic guy, wear like that cool collar thing? That looks dope.
Yeah, it looks so badass. It does.
I've never heard like a secular person say they want to wear the collar, but I mean,
or describe it as dope. Yes.
Oh my God, no!
Trust that guy. I know.
It doesn't. You're like you never heard a secular guy say it. Does any other religion regularly appear in like horror movies with a shotgun? Like there is a reason why when you have a priest fighting vampires, he's always dressed like a Catholic priest. Because a Protestant priest would look ridiculous. An Orthodox priest would look ridiculous.
Right, the Christian youth pastor in his like short jorts, his cargo shorts would look. Right.
It would look.
His goatee.
Yes.
Oh no, his tasteful tattoos.
Yeah, right.
Cool, but he's also
has good aesthetics. Has really good aesthetics. And I mean, look, one of the reasons I think I first did become Catholic is because I was an art history minor in college because I loved, going to Europe, and I was lucky enough to go and like, I went on like the pilgrimage route across northern Spain, and I got to see all of Paris, and so I spent a lot of time in Gothic like churches and
Catholicism carries European art history. I mean, it's doing all the work. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, whatever this is awesome. Like, okay, I'm down. Like Notre Dame, like gargoyles, like I'm down. Like, right. But then you go to like I'm here. I'm gonna join the church in the San Fernando Valley in LA, and you look at the church, and it's like this like puke pink 1964 monstrosity. Most hideous linoleum, and that's where you have to go to mass every day. So like, no wonder young women who are like into aesthetics have no interest.
Yeah. No, there's nothing
old, gross like motel.
Yeah. No, that's a big thing. Is
better than your local Baptist church.
Well, I mean, there's that, but that's a key thing about Catholicism, and we, with our weird self-invented religion, are really against idolatry and making things pretty. But like Catholicism nails that and has used it for a very long time to communicate the wonder of God, to really explain to you sort of like this is a humbling and amazing thing. And yet, like, the church has kind of dropped it to a great extent. Like, it used to use the aesthetics to communicate this is a big deal and to help you get into that mode. Why is it being dropped? It's like now when everyone else has figured out how to use looks.
Yeah, Simone, there's a documentary called The Last Cathedral about building the DC Cathedral. Cathedrals are basically impossible to build anymore.
Right. That was the last one. Yeah.
Well, but like, it doesn't have to be a cathedral. It could just be amazing fashion. It could just be
likely going to be one more. The Antonio Gaudi Cathedral.
Oh, I don't.
It's in the process of being built.
I'm not a fan.
Wait, the one in Barcelona? What do you mean?
Yeah, it's not finished yet.
Right. It's been going on for
100 years.
Yeah. Well, maybe someone will accidentally burn it to the ground. I hate him.
I like it. I've been there. I
like it. I actually like it. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool.
That man could be eaten alive by a duck. I'll just bring him back to life. I don't care. I'm not down with him. Really.
You're so trash, Simone. Yeah. I mean,
before we leave, we got to talk about your next media empire. What is it?
Okay. Yes. Okay, so I haven't really sort of officially announced it, but I posted a little bit about this on X earlier this year. One of the things I'd love to do, after I save the culture and like, destroy femininity and smash femininity. Yeah, I mean feminism.
Smash women. Don't say femininity.
I meant feminism. Okay. Smash the matriarchy. They already did that. So what I want to do is I want to retake the culture on the other form of culture, which is, entertainment, media, movies, shows, all this stuff, which, as you know, like people like me, like really, we don't see ourselves represented on TV. And I'm not talking about this is not a Christian. So I started a media company. We're going to be developing creative development for ideas that appeal to like people like me, but also kind of a larger general audience. There's half the country that like isn't into a lot of the slop on Netflix or Amazon Prime. They're sick of, the indoctrination, right? But also I don't want more Christian and Catholic content. That's like being handled. A lot of it's being handled kind of badly. There's a couple interesting things. We want to just do like good, fun, engaging stuff, whatever form that is. And it's not political. And it's only really political because it is apolitical. So that in itself now is a big political statement. If you're not having race quotas or Bechdel tests or no woke messaging, you're not celebrating any kind of like liberal tropes. That's very kind of radical, but we're not that far from that. That's what it used to sort of be. It's like old-fashioned masculinity, old-fashioned romance. Like, is that okay? Like, I don't know. Like,
this sounds really good to me.
The nuclear family, okay? Is that allowed anymore? Like, I don't know. Let's see. So, but also just like fun stuff, maybe some experimental stuff that's edgy too for like all the weirdos that I'm friends with. So yeah, there'll be more announcements about that in the new year.
I am excited for this idea. Let us know where we can help. We have a documentary that we've been meaning to make that keeps getting canceled by the mainstream. We get approvals from the creatives at like HBO. We got approvals from the creatives at Netflix, but it got killed by
their legal teams.
Quote unquote, the legal team. They said we're too controversial. So we'll see.
Right. But I think that makes it all the more juicy and profitable, frankly.
Well, I mean, controversy sells. That's actually the last like speed round question I wanted to ask you, because you have a lot of hot takes, controversy on X. What would you say is either the most surprising or most distinct and notable thing that you just got dogpiled for on X?
Wow, I blocked a lot of people. So if I'm being dogpiled, I probably don't know. I got a lot of heat for coming out a while early this year and saying that actually no, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce probably are in a real relationship. So a lot of the guys on the right were like, how could you? No, they're not. It's all a psyop. You're full of shit.
I saw that take. I watched you make that take on an episode. I was like, oh, she's getting spicy here.
So I think they were actually in, I don't know if they are now, but I mean, they were doing stuff together with each other. That seemed certain to me. Maybe it was all fake. I don't know. But I got heat from the right. From guys on the right were like, you bought into that psyop. I was like, did I? I don't know. We'll see.
Well, your argument, as I remember, was that, Taylor Swift's songs are all about, being like a cis straight woman pining after a man and hoping to find a good man. Is it insane that she would find one? It's not like she really was able to boost her own image from any sort of relationship. So even if they were paying her a lot, she already has enough money. It seems
right. What other reason was she doesn't
arbitrary?
Need the money.
Like, and people would be like, oh, well, she might still do it for the money, but it's like, yeah, but it would have delayed her possibility of finding a real man to marry. And she's kind of old at this point.
I mean, look, it could be that he is a sort of beard for her. Not that she's a lesbian, but that she's kind of like she's so married to herself, to her brand. Kind of like no man can ever be in a normal relationship with her. But they needed to give her a boyfriend just to make her seem like, a normal romantic girl. Maybe that I could buy a little bit, but I don't buy that it was like a Pfizer branded, NFL. Like people were saying that to me, and I was like, I don't think so, you guys.
Taylor Swift's in panic mode now. She needs to find a husband. She's not gonna. This brand is not gonna look good if she gets much older and is still single.
Yeah, it's hard to pull off the like spangly bodysuits when you're, in 10 years. Like, believe me, I'm not walking around in that stuff. Okay?
I don't know, man. You have to do a Hillary Clinton and you switch to the like Kim Jong-il pantsuit. That is the transition.
So what, she goes out on stage and she's like, attention. I will now sing my song about conformity and cats.
Yeah,
Enjoy.
it will be fine. There will be a large enough demographic for her eye of faith, but
Oh, that's so
that
funny.
is
Yeah.
interesting.
But yeah, the most heat I get is when I like step outside the like received wisdom of like, you know, the dissident right. That's when I really get.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, you know, that's actually something we really like about the dissident right, though, is that there are so many heterodox takes that you get that a lot. And even though a lot of people have a ton of butthurt when people deviate from, you know, the typical accepted wisdom, it still happens a ton. And it doesn't feel like the same like towing a party line thing
Yeah, they're
that
not
you
gonna
get from Fox
excommunicate you.
News or
They're not gonna cancel you. They're not gonna debank.
exactly. Yeah.
You know, they might like give you some shit in a group chat, but that's it.
Exactly. I love it. It's great. Well, and I think that's what builds resilience and good takes from people is when they get pushback. When you don't get pushback, it just gets so boring. And that's why I think so many, like why Blue Sky, for example, and Mastodon just kind of suck. Because it's not fun when people don't get
I love
pushback.
that the left keeps thinking that like they're gonna take off. Like was
No,
this
bless them for it.
No,
What?
They tried.
They tried. Never work.
Oh,
right.
Peachy, thank you so much for joining Basecamp. This was
This is so
amazing.
fun.
I'm really looking forward to. I think you're launching a media empire at exactly the right time with AI on the rise because you have like you can do it in a lean way, and you're also, you know, this is maybe the one reason why it's okay that you're in Southern California, right? You need to be in that media
Right?
zone.
I'm
so.
here. I might as well take over Hollywood.
Yeah, do it,
Yeah.
please. God help us. Yes, we need it. Cool. Well, thank you again. And everyone, don't forget to check out peachykeenan.com and Keenan Peachy on X. Definitely.
Thank you guys so much.
Have a good one.
Okay, I'm going to end recording. Oh, that was so fun.
Do be snappy with the intro because we want to be tighter about those. And then I am going to, well, we've been really growing quickly recently and I want to keep it up. Like, all right.
Yeah, Peachy, you're actually joining us at a really good time. Like,
Awesome.
you're not wasting your time now.
Yeah,
like
you're
we're
not wasting your
becoming
time now. Had you come
more of a
before.
Well, I
when
was
we
never
first-
thinking I would be wasting my time, but that's awesome. I'm happy you guys are doing great. Very
When
cool.
we first scheduled, we were probably at maybe a third the view count of an average video that we are today.
Wow.
So
Good
yeah.
job.
Anyway, Simone, I will let you go. Remember to start with a big hello, okay?
Okay. Yes, this is the signature thing.